Kevin Durso, he's live at the Wells Fargo Center as his Game 82 this afternoon at 3 p.m. Flyers, Rangers. Kevin, how you doing?
Doing good, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing well. So, look, it's a pretty simple equation, right, Kevin? They need the points and they're in. But you know what? Sometimes things are easier said than done in hockey, especially against a rival like the Rangers. Talk about what are your thoughts going into this game. We hear that Lundqvist is going to start. So, it's going to be a tough matchup. It's not like it's going to be a team rolling over for the Flyers here.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at the last two games in particular, the Flyers played the Islanders on Tuesday and then the Hurricanes on Thursday. Those were two games that were hard fought and against two teams that are out of the playoff picture. Their seasons are over following gameplay today. So, clearly, any team that's going to face the Flyers knowing what's at stake at this point is going to bring their best game. I can certainly say that Henrik Lundqvist is going to be trying to be on his game, and especially the last time that he faced the Flyers was actually back in February, and he gave up 7 goals to the Flyers that day. So Henrik Lundqvist is looking to redeem himself a little bit against a team he's had great success against in his career, and then you've got just the overall the angle from the Rangers side, which would be we can be a spoiler here and we can make this really tough on them. Yeah, the Flyers still would have the upper hand because 1 point lost by Florida is still going to take care of business and get them into the playoffs. But the Rangers can kind of pin the Flyers down also and give them an incredibly difficult first-round matchup in playing the Atlantic Division winner if they don't come away with any points at all and still manage to back their way into the playoffs. So the Flyers want to come out here and take advantage of the opportunity today to be able to keep everything in their control. This is a game that's in their control. They know that. They know that they control their own destiny. And if they can find a way to win it, then it puts the pressure on other teams in the playoff picture to stay course as well, or it could seriously change a lot of the way the playoff seeding turns out.
I've been talking about throughout the show about the fact that, I think a guy that has had an amazing season, he should be a candidate for the Hart Memorial Trophy. Claude Giroux, it's more than just the career highs in goals, assists, and points. It's more than the fact he's leading the league in assists. It's the fact that when his team has needed him, he stepped up. Since March 1st, he has 9 goals. Talk about the play of Claude Giroux this year, and especially since people forget, it was Hackstall who put him in this position. He moved Couturier up to the first line and bumped Giroux over to the wing.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one thing I can kind of point out is that when I was here for Sunday's game against Boston, Giroux left the ice in warm-ups, kind of slammed his stick on the ice, almost as if he was frustrated about something. And in warm-ups, it's kind of uncommon to see. So he's got an intensity about him right now that is literally trying to carry this team into the playoffs. And truth be told, every time he's come out in the last few games, he's put one big goal after the other onto the board for the Flyers. Thursday's was obviously huge, and it really got this place going crazy. They put him up on the scoreboard after he scored the goal to give the Flyers a 3-2 lead at the time against Carolina, and the place is just going crazy. So he's really bounced back in a big way. He should be a Hart Trophy candidate. Don't know if he'll necessarily win it. He's got some stiff competition for sure, but no question he's this team's MVP, and he continues to deliver on a nightly basis with just one big goal after another.
Well, here's the thing, and this is what I was saying earlier, Kevin. To me, you look at the other candidates, a lot of those guys are playing on teams with much better talent than the Flyers. I mean, nothing against the Flyers roster, but, Malkin, he's got a pretty great player in Crosby on the same team with him on the Penguins. It's not like Kopitar's playing with a bunch of bums out there in L.A. The Vegas team has been very good this year. So, whereas Giroux, he's leading the league in assists, and there's no other superstar on his own team.
Yeah, and that's very true. I mean, I think the only player who has really compared to a similar situation is Taylor Hall, just because New Jersey's been in kind of the same position. There's really not a secondary guy who stacks up the way that Hall does to the next in line, the same way for Giroux, where Giroux is clearly far and away this team's best player this season. But in the same sense, Giroux has always been that under-the-radar kind of player, and quite honestly, I think from his own personal standpoint, I don't think he minds that. I think he's perfectly fine being the guy who kind of gets overlooked and has something to prove and takes full opportunity to prove himself night after night.
Kevin Durso joins us live from the Wells Fargo Center as the Flyers Game 82 win in their in versus the Rangers. You can hear the coverage right here starting at 3 on 97.3 ESPN. Kevin, Elliot is back in goal. He gave up that one fluky goal, but overall, I thought he played pretty well. And we know that he's a leader on this team. He's a guy who's been a consistent force in goal. He leads the team in quality starts this year with 19. Talk about what Brian Elliott cannot do just in this game, but what he brings to this team for the postseason.
Yeah, I think he brings them some stability. One thing about Brian Elliott that's been kind of one of his consistencies this season, and it's not something that he necessarily controls, but it's the team plays well in front of him. He's got 22 wins this season, and if you picked any other netminder for this team, you'd find that it's been a lot more difficult for the Flyers to pick up wins in the games that they've played in, more or less just because they haven't been able to put together the same kind of performances on a regular basis in the games that, say, Michael Neuvert started or Peter Mrazek started as compared to Brian Elliott. So Elliott's been kind of like their stability in net, in just a sense, in terms of just being able to give this team some confidence about who's back there. And I think it says a lot when Dave Haxtell came out after the last game on Thursday and basically point blank said he's our guy. He's the guy that we're going to turn to. He's the number one. So to put that label on him like that, especially when coming into the year, it was kind of a question mark. Was Brian Elliott the number one? Was Michael Neuvert the number one? You go out and you get Peter Mrazek in a situation where you need a guy to fill in with both down at a time. They've answered all the questions at this point. Brian Elliott's the go-to guy, and the Flyers certainly play like that when he's in goal.
When you look at the Flyers, if they do, which we hope they can, clinch a playoff spot, what kind of run can this team make? To me, it kind of depends on the matchup. You obviously want to avoid a team like the Penguins and the Lightning, but I think if they get a team like the Capitals, listen, it's not like this team is a bunch of chump change. The Flyers are a good team, and I think that if they get a team like the Capitals, let's say, they can get to the second round, and then you never know what's going to happen. So to me, I want to know what your perspective is, Kevin. What do you think the Flyers can do in the postseason?
Well, I think it's one of the reasons why today is so important for them, too, because you can look at this game today and go 1 point gets you into the playoffs, and that's all well and good. If you win the game, you're putting pressure on other teams to force you into a matchup that may not be as suited for you. I think Washington's a tremendous matchup for this team in the first round. I really do, just because Washington hasn't changed much in terms of their makeup over the course of 2 years ago to now. It's still the same superstar players. It's still primarily the same core players. That their defense has changed quite a bit in the last 2 years. And then you look at the Flyers' changes. On paper, the Flyers are definitely a more improved team from 2 years ago with all the youth that they've added and brought into the picture. So you look at all of those pieces. The Flyers have matched up with Washington very well this season. I don't think that Columbus is as bad of a fit as people want to make it out to be, because the Flyers have played Columbus pretty hard as well. Pittsburgh's been different. You've seen mismatches against Pittsburgh. Boston or Tampa is a little bit of a tricky one too, because the Flyers have been in games, in close games with those teams. So certainly stranger things have happened, but you want to try to put yourself in the best position moving forward. Washington would give them the best position to be able to potentially win a series here, and then try to see what happens in a round 2 series, whether you're playing a team like Pittsburgh then or somebody else. But it would give you a chance to get past that first part of the playoffs and show some sign of progress and growth, and really obviously a valuable experience for all your young players, and have a chance to continue playing and see what happens.
Follow him on Twitter at Kevin_Durso. He's calling us live from the Wells Fargo Center here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline as the Flyers, Game 82, win and they're in. They play the Rangers today. Coverage begins at 3 p.m. here on 97.3 ESPN. Kevin, appreciate the time and enjoy the game.
Thanks, Josh.